everybody. You've tuned into the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance, Cops for Kids, subsidiary of the Indiana State Police. I'm your host, Sergeant Rich Myers with the Indiana State Police Public Information Office. Tom Trial, our videographer, man behind the scenes, putting us on YouTube each and every week. So make sure you go to our YouTube site, see all Tom's works that he has there for you to see, not only from our recent State Police Roadshows, but other stuff that Tom's picked up from the past that he has on our YouTube site. Welcome.
Thank you.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing really well.
Glad to see you again.
Good to see you.
Glad you're dry.
I am dry. Well, it's a little rainy.
Yeah, it's kind of
out
rainy
at times,
today.
but
Does that bring back PTSD or anything?
no, but it's close. It makes you a little edgy.
Captain Mike Pruitt with Wayne Township Fire Department. Thank you for being here. We're going to have a little different topic today. It's something that you're involved with. And how long have you been involved with Task Force 1?
I've been with Task Force 1 for about 13 years.
And tell us what Task Force 1 does and what's their agenda and what's their responsibility.
So Indiana Task Force 1 is one of 28 urban search and rescue, FEMA-sponsored urban search and rescue teams from across the country. The team is made up of firefighters, police officers, and civilians from across the state of Indiana. And we train year-round, but when we're activated, we come together and we respond to whatever. It's a man-made or a natural disaster, and that's what the system is designed to give that support to local and state communities in the event of a catastrophic event such as a hurricane.
Does each state have a task force?
Not every state. If you do the math, Rich, there's 28 teams, and there's a few more states in that.
Did you say 28? Because
Yeah.
I really wasn't listening.
Just kidding. Anyhow, it's all right. It's all right. But I don't get the opportunity to do that very often. I call somebody out on math.
It'll
but,
be your
you know,
last, believe me.
Yeah. But no, not every state has a team. So Indiana is very fortunate to have a team because not only are we an asset nationally, but we are also an asset to the state of Indiana if called upon by the governor.
So does that, do they set these out regionally then? So this will be good for this spot, or can you guys go from here to California, or does it
We
matter?
could go from here to California. There is a national rotation of teams every year, so you move up the rotation every year. So like an initial incident such as a hurricane may require an immediate response of 3 teams. So they may select the 3 closest teams to that area, send them, then they go into the national rotation model and start rotating teams. So in this most recent hurricane response we went to, we had teams that drove all the way from California to North Carolina. So they came from all parts of the country.
Do you guys all drive to take your assets with you, or do some fly, or how does that work out?
Most everybody drives. There have been cases where people have been flown. Last year we saw that in Puerto Rico, where there was only one way to get there, and that was by airlift. And so that was one of the times that we did use aircraft to move the teams.
Do they use big enough stuff to take your assets, or do they have stuff?
Yes. So we have, just in the last hurricane we responded to, we had a fleet of about 13 vehicles, and that includes small command vehicles all the way up to 53-foot semi-trucks. So
That's yours alone?
Yes, that belonged to Indiana Task Force 1. And so we carry all of our rescue equipment, all of our support equipment. We have to be able to support ourselves for 72 hours. So we have the capability to set up housing, showers, feed ourselves, and set up all our command components along with all our rescue equipment and take all the personnel. So it's a pretty cool outfit to be a part of.
What is your role and responsibility when you get there, or is that decided by somebody there?
So everyone on the team serves in a position or a division. My job is a safety officer. I kind of dual role as a public information officer when I'm out on deployment with them. But my primary responsibility is safety officer. There's typically 2 safety officers that go out with the team. We have a division of rescue workers. We have a hazmat division. We have a medical division that, we have doctors and paramedics that work out of that support the team. We have logistics section. The logistics section is very important because they move us from point A to point B and then assure that everything is up and going whenever we get to that final destination. So they have a very huge job. Those are our truck drivers. and their title is logistics specialist, and but they're extremely hard workers. So we're a multifaceted team, and we can do everything from search and rescue operations to where we've even been moved over into more of a humanitarian effort of. We saw this in Puerto Rico, where we were actually going to communities and triaging communities to see if there were anyone there that needed immediate medical evacuation. So we were checking people. And then we've also taken steps to provide literature and information through communities that maybe were cut off that we had access to early on, so that people knew how to get help. So we fill a lot of roles, but our primary is urban search and rescue.
So you've been to two recent ones, Puerto Rico and
Puerto Rico, Hurricane Irma last year. Those are the big ones. And then this year was Hurricane Florence in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia area.
The different regions, did you find different roles that you had to play, or is pretty much the same thing?
Depending on some communities are better prepared than others for hurricanes. Each storm is different.
Right.
So some storms may come in as a category, like in this most recent storm, we were looking at a Category 4 storm that was approaching the coast of North Carolina, dropped down to a Category 1 before it came ashore, and a lot of people kind of went, whew, well, it's just a Category 1 now, but what they weren't grasping was the fact that this thing was moving 2 miles an hour.
Right.
So when it's moving 2 miles an hour and you have that much rain coming down, it immediately becomes a major flooding event, and that's what we saw play out in the Carolinas.
Yeah.
And so that's what many of our teams were dealing with. We're dealing with flood issues.
When you arrived there, where do you set up? How close are you to wait for this to come in? Are you near the storm when you
So there's a couple different ways that we've been deployed. One of the things, we drove straight to Raleigh, North Carolina. In the case with Hurricane Florence, we checked in there. It was a staging area for all the resources coming into North Carolina. So we had state resources, we had national resources, and local resources all operating. And then you were dispatched from there to the location that you needed to go with your team. We originally checked in at Raleigh, and then we were assigned to Wilmington, North Carolina. When we were assigned to Wilmington, we knew we were right in the thick of things at that point. They were putting us right on the coast. We've done that before. We've also been where they've staged everybody out of the way until the storm came in and then sent everybody in. So it's kind of a safety issue. It kind of depends on where they have to house us.
Right.
Fortunately, in Wilmington, we were able to be put up in the Border Patrol U.S. Customs building there at the airport in Wilmington, which was a hurricane-rated building, and that's where we rode the hurricane out. So that's how we transited a couple hours from Raleigh to Wilmington. But once we got there, got settled in, then we just waited for the storm to move through.
Well, again, you're listening to the State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Lions Cops for Kids. Captain Mike Pruitt with Wayne Township Fire Department. Also with Task Force 1, just recently returned from second recent hurricane deployment. Mike, do you guys stay within your group? Do you get with other task force members if they need other people, or how does that work out? So sometimes we may have more than one task force working in a region, and so we may work together on different incidents. In our case in Wilmington, we were the sole FEMA USAR task force in the Wilmington area, and we were assigned to that county and the city of Wilmington to provide them with whatever rescue services they needed. That started right out of the gate. So we tend to work with the locals a lot more. They try to strategically place the teams to support local operations, so they might spread us out into multiple counties. But when we do come together, we do share resources and work together, and we did that most recently in Irma and in Hurricane Maria, where the teams were all working together. So we can do either. But we're there to support the state and local resources, so we work hand in hand. And North Carolina, out of all my hurricane responses I've gone to, our interaction with the public safety officials and the communities there in the Wilmington area was fantastic. It almost reminded me a lot of being home in Indiana, the folks there and the way everybody interacted together. So it was really nice to be able to work into that area. What's your typical work day? Is that a 12-hour day, or how does that work out? So our typical work day is usually a 12-hour daylight operation. We don't do night ops unless we absolutely see the need, which
in the North Carolina hurricane with Florence, we went to 24-hour operations because we had flooding issues going on and they needed to be dealt with in the evening. The reason we don't operate at night if we don't have to is just a safety factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's just so many things that we can't see out there that are hazards, especially after a hurricane comes through. But we also know that our job is inherently dangerous and we're here to provide rescue services. And in the case of North Carolina, we rescued over 100 people one evening, and it started about 10:30 at night and didn't let up until 7:30 a.m. So that was a situation where we knew there had to be people rescued, and we put our people to work. And fortunately, everything worked like clockwork, and they had to work fast. This was one of the worst situations that I had ever experienced as a responder, especially as the safety officer, being concerned with the safety officer of our personnel. You know, having to send them time after time in a boat into a dark neighborhood where I can no longer see them and I have limited communications, but we had to just fall back on our training,
right?
And that paid off for us in the long run.
How do you find these people? Is this a verbal, hey, we need help? Or?
You know, the interesting thing that people often ask is, you know, well, were people calling 911? Were they calling on cell phones? I can tell you during a natural disaster, there's a good chance you're probably going to lose any type of wireless technology. And at that point, it may be more of word of mouth. In the case with these people that we started rescuing, we did receive a call. We had a liaison from the local fire department that was assigned to our team. So he had received information a family needed evacuated. We went in to evacuate the family and stepped into a bee's nest of 100 people needing rescued, not because they lived in a flood zone, but because their drains became plugged from all the debris from the hurricane. And I had this conversation with somebody the other day. They're asking, well, I don't live in a flood zone. Well, you don't keep your drains clear, you're going to live in a flood zone. Yeah. And so communications, a lot of times for our guys, was they saw people shining flashlights, or they could see people waving their arms on their front porch. You know, people out of a neighborhood know who's there and who's not. So we would literally go to a house just to check based on some information that someone might be there. They'd find somebody, they want to get out. And that's kind of how that worked, because the 911 system down there at that time was working somewhat. Right. We didn't have very good wireless connectivity, and our radio system that we were using, we had not been able to get our radio repeater up. And so we could only talk to our base of operations if I had 1 bar of cell service. So I was able to actually send my location from my Google map back to one of our task force leaders to show our location and where we needed more help. So there's a lot of challenges when the storm comes in, right? But you have to. And, you know, the wireless technology just goes out the window. And I've seen that in the last 2 years I've been on hurricane deployments.
Yeah, you can't, you're not going to depend on that.
Right.
People think, well, I'll just call 911. It's probably not.
It doesn't work like that in a disaster.
And your water is rising rapidly, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't. I'd never seen it rain that hard before in my whole life, to where literally I couldn't, excuse me, I couldn't see 10 feet in front of me. It was raining so hard. And my pockets on my rain gear, every time I stuck my hand in my pockets were full. The vehicle that we were traveling in, the doors opened up if we were putting evacuees in the vehicle waiting on a National Guard truck to arrive. If I had my doors open for a minute, the pockets filled with water all the way to the top. The inside of the vehicles were soaked. They had to get detailed when they got back just to make sure we didn't have any mold growing in them. But
that's constant.
It was constant. It was just,
that's got to be a mental drain on you, because that's.
It was at one. You know, initially you're like, man, I don't want to get too wet, and then by the time it's all over, you know, you don't have to take a shower anymore. You just need a little soap, and you just lather up and stand out in the rain. Yes, exactly. and the water wasn't cold; it was a warm rain, so you had everything you needed.
Well, Mike, we're down to our last minute. I appreciate you coming in here and talking to us about this, and I'm sure you're not looking forward to going out and doing this again. But thank you for what you do with Task Force 1, and that you guys are available to do that, and the training that you guys do to help those people out, and we appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Rich.
Well, again, you've been listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. Captain Mike Pruitt with the Wayne Township Fire Department, PIO, has been talking to us about his work with Task Force 1 and their work on the hurricanes that have been coming around that he's been on. And hopefully you will not be going out on one here very soon. I haven't heard anything out there. Have you?
Nothing at the moment, but we're still in October, and October can be a very active month.
Well, let's hope and pray nothing happens. Again, thank you for listening to the Roadshow. We'll talk to you next week on the Roadshow. Tom, thank you for being here, putting us out on the YouTube show. So make sure you go to that channel. Roadshow's out.